Happy Friday, Scrap Masters. It is week 26. Are you ready to see what series number 2, Random Roll and Spin, has in store for us? I'm sure it's going to be a great show. At least I hope so. Are you ready? Let's get started. And that is right. Well, welcome back, Scrap Masters, quilt makers, friends, family, and just good old So Well fans alike. I am Rob Appell, your fearless leader here, and I am super blessed to have all of you following along, whether you're doing the actual Scrap Masters projects or just here to say hello. Please make sure you are joining us if you are part of the premiere, the chat, the Friday afternoon, 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. We have a group over there playing along in the chat box, so please feel free to join us. And the theme for this week is pushing through in a positive way. So feel free to drop your comments over there. What are you pushing through? What has been a positive thing that has helped motivate you or get you through this week? And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself out over my skis because I am excited to present the Grateful List again this week. But one of those things was really just sewing for me, making quilts. And I'm pretty excited, and we'll talk about that more. Now, before I roll and spin with our official gear here, I want to point out, thank you very much. Oh man, it's been incredible. I've been receiving really fun email and Facebook messages about all of you receiving your official Scrap Masters Spinners game set here. This way you can be making your quilts or whatever you like to do with color, really randomly and play along. I have these. They're available on robappell.com. And I'm really excited to have those up and ready to rock and roll. Also, we have one last Fire and Ice bundle for all of you available. This is it, the last one that has half yards of the tone on tones from the newer Worlds collections, and then a yard of each of the big mandala print. And I still have a couple of plenty, I don't know, maybe a dozen-ish or so of Groundworks and Newest Worlds bundles. Shipping, of course, you get your stickers and everything as well. And I'm super excited. Playing on the design wall this week, I've shifted kind of our glowing diamond, if you will, from the center off to the point. I had a couple things going over the last few weeks, kind of in stripes in different places. Not sure I'm loving it. I have a feeling now that I'm 26 weeks into this, I can start to see a quilt developing. And I can also see there's a block on the wall that kind of glows differently when I take photographs or video than with the naked eye. And this one right here is reading very citrusy and lime. I love it, but you might be able to tell it may be moved or replaced. Again, always just playing with a color flow and feel. I have a few of the extra blocksies, yellows and blues will fit down at the bottom, moving over to some of my yellows and oranges. And so let's just push all of this out of the way as we get ready to figure out what we are going to do today. Download your free pattern over on robappell.com. Please subscribe right here to YouTube. Be part of our community. Super excited to have all of you. Six-Sided Die will tell us which block it'll be today. Here we go. Block 6. It's almost like this die has gotten weighted that way. I've done a lot of block 6s, but that's okay. Now, if you are receiving your official spinner in the mail, let me point out again, one of the best ways to give it a whole roundabout here is put your finger in the center or your thumb, but I like my finger here. Kick it around officially. We're doing, oh, it's kind of on the liner, so I'm going to push it to blue-green because I just love the blue-greens. Oh, boy, do I. Okay, so we're going to do blue-green, block 6. How many different fabrics can we use this week? Week 26, this is good. I'm looking for somewhere in the middle of the die, 12, 13-ish, something like that. Here we go. Oh! I called it. Did you see that? I called it. Probably rolled off camera, but there it is. It's official. It's a 13. It went right across the slider, kind of like a little, indie slide across the color wheel there. That was amazing. Did I break it? No, it's good. Unbreakable. I love it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start planning out our block. And again, jumping a little bit ahead, I said I've done a lot of block 6s because I may have been working on a surprise project for all of you that will be joining me here in the next couple of days at the Scrap Masters Retreat in Quitman, Texas, which is going to be amazing. And you can see I've got a bunch of samples here on the design wall. Yeah, no. But I am working on something that I think you're all going to love, and I've been playing with a bunch of these blocks. So block 6, here we go. It's our checkerboarded star, kind of a weird hourglass in the center. Maybe we'll get through it this week. We'll see how that goes. Blue-green's our color, so let's go ahead and bring in this blue-green as my fun color for this, because I just don't know if I've got enough of this in the quilt. And that's the other thing, is I can kind of go up and I can look around and I can see of all of the blocks, I actually have a little bit less of this. So let's shift to this. This is a blue-green as well. We'll shift to this today. We have 13 fabrics, so I'm going to choose 12 more from the tray of treasure here. I want some really heavy accent on this, and so that means my lights are going to be of this blue-green family, and so I can use a couple. I've been getting into this combo. I will need a couple of extra lights in the background. So yes, I do want to do this. They're going to use these 3 in this white space as my combo, so that way I can do something really fun. And I want, I think, to keep it bright and fresh, but I also want to bring in some of these blue purples I have. Okay, so this could actually really be what shows up as the star here. And then to really accent those, which would read as my mediums, I can bring in a bunch of these fun oranges. So this could make a really fun block, and I don't know that I have this exact combo. I've made several with this combo, but adding in the orange, this one here is similar, and we like that one. So let's see where we're at count-wise. Here would be 5. Not very many mediums to work with. Oh, let's make the star glow. Make this our light, our medium, and this will read as our dark, which will be our star, which means I can add in as many of the oranges as I want. So if this was 5, I now need basically 8 to bring myself to 13. If my math is still on. Yes. So we're going to end up with a yellow glowing star in a field of the blue-green, kind of the turquoise colors, and these purples. So that makes up for my 13 fabrics in my choices. Let's go ahead and start to make some decisions here. Now, when I go to do this, I need to remember that this is going to now be reading as my light. This is where I often get confused, especially with this block. So I'm going to set these darks down here for a little bit, help my brain maybe process a little differently here, okay? So therefore, when we need our darks and our light combinations, I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's 7 half square triangle combos, and that's featuring these. Okay, so we know we had 8 colors, so let's pull out the ones. Well, these are going to be nice with the little 2.5 inch squares. I'm working with 3 inch squares. If you're new to the show today, yeah, working with 3 inch squares here so that I can trim down my half square triangles yielding 2 each, or I can also get my little squares 2.5 inches, which will be the final units. What do we say we needed of these things? 7? And I want it to kind of glow out to the edges. So we're going to definitely want some, make sure those lights are in there. That's going to work nice. Okay. So now here's the key. Remember, these are going to pair up with what I'm calling the lights, which is this turquoise family. And a lot of those are going to be the Newest Worlds print that are low volume neutral. And I'm going to definitely specifically pair these with the fabrics that don't have a lot to say. The solids. Then I'll come back in here and I'll just use one. And then a couple of these on the busier prints. Those are the half square triangles needed, 7 of them, like I said, yielding 14 of our dark and our light combinations. Now we need our light and our medium combos, and we need 2 for the center and 1 for each of the corners. So that's 6 total, or 3. So let's go ahead now and pull out 3 here and make some fun, bright combos. More on the yellow than on the oranger sides, because those are still representing more of the star points. Okay, good. Those should be all of our half square triangles now. We'll make those in a second, but let's go ahead and set aside everything else we're going to need for our dark, which is our light. I know, it's a brain tease, isn't it? So I'll need 4 of my squares from this size cut down, and I think I'm going to cheat and just use the ones that maybe have been pre-made for me, making my life pretty dang easy. Okay, so that's fantastic. That's the 4 of those I need. Of course, I have to obsessively put my colors back in the right order, but pretty soon my scraps are going to go in the suitcase because I'm leaving on Monday for the Scrap Masters retreat, and I'm taking all of my scraps with me. And being organized and having these 3-inch squares, folks, has really been super helpful. Don't let me forget, this is the one I need to keep track of. Okay, now for our light square, or let's start with our medium squares. We need 4 of those. So let's just pull 2 and 2. We can stack these corners up. Then I'll trim these all down in a second as a pile. And then I'm going to also need of the light reading squares, or my blue-greens this week, 8 of those to fill in the 4 corners around. So again, I want to make sure I represent my low volume neutral. I didn't use much of this earlier, so let's bring in more of this as well. And then I've got a bunch of these, it looks like, that have already been cut down. We can utilize 1, 2. Reminder to heat up my iron there. That would be 3. And there's what we need. Okay, so side these out of the way so that we're building half square triangles. But before we move on to those, let's take a minute and just trim down our squares by going with a 2.5 inch mark. And then slicing both sides there. Same here on our, I guess this is my medium. And that'll help me get all those pieces down and made. And I do want to stay organized with them. It'll be most easiest, or easier, to lay out this pattern, especially if you're going to be mixing and matching colors. Remember, your patterns are built, they're free, light, medium, and dark. But sometimes if you're going to do switcheroos like that, you might need to label them in a different way, because it can get quite confusing quite quick. You've seen me struggle some of the weeks in the past with this. But again, it's all for the nature of fun and some beautiful quilts when we are all finished up here. All right, time to make our half square triangles. I'm going to swing the edge guide out of the way, and I'm going to go ahead and do prep work for 2 each doing diagonal chain sewing, watching my eye here, edge of my foot, and we're just going to feed all these through nice and quickly. So once you've made one set of the diagonals on each of the squares, I'm going to go ahead and rotate them and do them all again. And when I was saying pushing through at the beginning of today's video for our theme, you notice I'm not pushing the fabric through. I'm just letting the machine do all the work. And then when I get onto this side, it's going to be really easy because I'm just going to kind of follow visually also that first line of stitching. Okay, now it's time to go ahead and start to trim these as we go. I'm going to separate all of the individual squares. And I've been learning some tricks and I've been practicing a few things, and this is something you may or may not want to do, but watch what can happen. If I go ahead and start to lay a few of these, let's call it 3 or 4, I can cut bulk amounts, but I could also destroy bulk amounts. So your sewing needs to be fairly accurate. Definitely use a straight edge to protect your hand, and you're going to go corner to corner and slice through before we get ready to trim these all down. So this can be a very effective way to be working through multiple half square triangles. As you know, I love making these. And as I was starting to show you what was on the design wall earlier, I might have mentioned that we're getting ready for this wonderful retreat. So yes, I'll be flying out Monday, and I'm really excited. I've been working a bunch and kind of catching up, making a new project. Don't want to say too much, but I wanted to test a few of my theories on Scrap Masters before I did the big workshop out there. So anyways, those have all been trimmed down now. I'm going to use my slotted trimmer to make these down at 2.5 inch before I press them all. So I'm trimming along the edges of the ruler, and then I just manually dog ear the corners there, set it aside like Uncle Henry Ford would do, all steps at one time to stay focused. I'm looking at the stitch line along there or the dotted line along there. Many of you have different methods for squaring up your half square triangles. I like this a lot when I'm teaching and speaking because I can do it without having to look as closely at all 4 steps. Not as accurate because I haven't pressed first, but it certainly works good enough, especially for me, the carefree quilt maker, right? So anyways, let's go ahead and get these taken care of and pressed over so we can come back to the design work and discuss the Grateful List for the week. So as I'm finishing my ironing here, I am also, again, just keeping myself organized. And I want to point out that I was only cutting that center line multiple stacks at once. I always use the slotted trimmer or any triangle trimming tool because you're reading off of that diagonal line. Really, you're only doing one half square triangle at a time, which is why I think folks start to complain about them a little bit because they can be a little bit laborious. But trimming them down makes them so good and accurate, and which is really important. It's a really good tool to have. And speaking of good tools to have, I want to jump into the Grateful List as I begin designing this. And in order to talk about my Grateful List this week, I need to give a bit of a precursor. And I've talked a little bit without saying much, and I'm going to still stay in about that position, but I've been struggling with some issues. And they have really triggered my ADHD brain, which I think therefore has been triggering my craving, my desire, and or my depression, which is interesting. So the more I learn about the way I feel, both good and bad, the better I can combat what's going on with that. So first on the Grateful List, of course, today is having tools to win. So whether that's making these wonderful, cool tools like this, like the spinner, and having those available, robappell.com. Again, thank you for all your orders, which has been a great win, but also learning and remembering my yoga and my just restfulness, my reading, my Bible time, all of that kind of stuff. So very important for me as I was really kind of starting to spin out a little bit the last few days. Now, I'll get to number 2 here in a second, but let's start building out this so that we can continue on as my hands are working here. So I'm going to need to take, remember, this is where my brain rotates. So the purples are my mediums and the lights are my yellows. No, the lights are my, did I screw that up again this week? Yep. Yeah, kind of funny. I was just starting to talk about how I have been struggling, and a lot of it is not having the clarity and working with some of my tools. And as I get ready to start this again, I realized I've put my wrong fabric choices together because I keep choosing different colors than the way they're laid out here versus as the palette. So again, this should have been the green, blues, and the purples versus the yellows and the purples. But I think because I've got so many of them this time, I'm going to try to lay it out. So I'm going to get going here. This is going to be a trip. As I do, I'm just going to have to make some different color choices to make things work for myself. And I think part of it is just taking the cornerstones and rotating them out so that the yellow points all the way off of the block. And I think that will help us greatly. We're going to start out there. I think that might help us. And then in these positions here, so that the breaking up of the star happens, I'm going to bring these to the center this way to kind of keep my eye pulling back and forth. Let's see if this works, folks. So therefore, in that case, I would have also had, and in this one, the yellows would have been pointing outward, and I was going to use my darkers. Don't have a lot of different choices there. I have those choices. Okay, just trying to get different fabrics. So this is going to look as scrappy as possible. Okay, so then with that being said, these are the darks. So that's where I keep messing up, is using my brightest fabrics as my darks. So I'm going to need off of these corners here and here and here and here. Okay, that's not terrible. That means I'll also have squares. Oh, those will be these. This is going to work. So now print in a solid. Okay. Okay, I think I'm kind of on it. Man, it's racking my brain. So that means then these will come out here in the different positions. It's going to be pretty nonetheless. And it won't affect, as long as these next parts go in, it will be okay. And in order to do that, really, it's just this section here we want to have fun with. So kind of keeping the light, dark checkerboard effect. So that's where I was just going to have to make some wise choices. So instead of letting my yellow oranges touch, they're going to rotate to get the teal backgrounds to pop. Saving my lightest ones for the outside. Let me get these all down and see. I might need to make some other rotational changes is my guess. Okay, wow, I did it. So I have a couple of fabrics. If I just move that and that, I think maybe I don't have the same fabrics touching anywhere other than just those corners. I can live with that. That was a mind tease. So yeah, I just had to basically choose in a couple different sections to rename fabrics. And that's partly the fun of this. There are no rules with Scrap Masters. It does push your brain a bit at times, especially if you're going to work organically like I like to do. Now, I'm going to go ahead and lock back down my seam allowance, get back on target here with the video, actually, and make sure you're all enjoying yourselves out there while you're chatting along. And I'm just going to start sewing these units across here in rows. We'll do all the ironing after the rows have been stitched. And I was talking about how grateful I was to have the different tools to work with through depression, which is kind of funny, but I was petering out. And so I found myself sewing, and that felt fantastic. Now, one of the other things I tried to do, which is interesting, and partly why I'm saying pushing on, is I also was loving it. So yesterday I'm doing yoga, and I'm watching the ocean, and it was rainy and windy, and all of a sudden there was this, you can see from the horizon, this was the time to go surfing. 10:33 in the morning, and this is why I love being independent. Check out what's just started to happen. So yeah, this morning there was a bunch of wind on the water. Yesterday there was no swell at all. And due to the slight rain we're getting, and Morro Rock protects from the south wind, swell picked up, and we go out there and get some good surf. Well, most of you are maybe at home working. Sorry. So of course I suited up and went out. I got 3 waves and had a great time. But unfortunately, by the time I got to the beach, I realized something had twisted in my back. And I got stiffer and stiffer throughout the day. And I was just having the worst of times. And so my body started talking to me, and I normally wouldn't do this, but last night, late at night, I actually put my socks and shoes back on to stand and sew in my sewing room. I needed extra support because I'm always standing and sewing, and I needed the sewing to help me feel better, one of the tools, but my good instinct, part 2, I got you there, folks. Part 2 of the Grateful List, or number 2, was that good instinct of putting on the shoes, listening to my body. But the other reason I was fighting depression was I've been working on what I thought was going to be a really cool applique quilt project, and I've just realized it's not what I want it to be. So I packed it up yesterday, and I started stitching on something else, and I made myself feel so good. So 1 and 2 were kind of combinations between each other, using my tools, such as sewing and surfing and yoga and reading and things like that, settling down, but also trusting my instinct. I think part of why I was feeling a little low energy, unmotivated, is I knew inside that that project I was working on wasn't a winner, and I needed to just stop. And that's what I did, and that was a wise choice, or a good instinct. And that also freed me up for a little bit more time, which brings me up for Grateful List number 3. Folks, it's all of you that I'll be seeing next week out at Quitman, Texas. The Camp Scrap Masters retreat. We've been talking about this for a long time. We're going to have a great time. Now, we'll see all of you on Friday from Camp Scrap Masters, because I will make sure that you get a video with a roll and a spin to keep you current from the craziness that is going on out there. I won't do it live, because when I do it live out there, it's just too wild, and the echo in the big retreat center and all of that can be a real challenge. But we're going to have so much fun. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. I just got the Scrap Master stickers in time. If you're interested in the Sew Well t-shirts, there's a link on my website that you can go over and purchase those through Sticker Mule. I have been buying their stuff for years, and it's wonderful, and I'm feeling super excited about all of that. Okay, now that I've got this final piece on my last row, I'm going to press them all for successfully nesting them, starting by taking 1 row and pressing what I'll say is to the left, and then it'll be to the right on the next one. You've seen me do this a million times, hopefully anyways, meaning that you've been watching the video and you're enjoying what's going on. But if not, I'm going to take this, I'm going to rotate it around, and that allows me to press in the same direction my body is used to, my workstation is used to, but also allow those seams to crisscross and nest over each other. Every other row is going to be natural. Every other row is rotated. It's also starting to say earlier, and I don't know why I feel like I need to put this out on video, but I am feeling pretty apprehensive and anxious about the retreat in a way, because it'll be my first time going back to Stitch in Heaven after they let me go as their YouTube dude. And I can't say I feel great about that, but I do feel like it's really important that I let you all know that we are still partners, as well as that the anxiety, I think, is natural. Anytime, you're going back to a situation that has changed from what you expected. And that's just something I notice a lot about myself. I get a little overworked up, but maybe that's that extra energy. So I think that's been partly what I've been fighting the last couple of days with motivation, as well as is really, I know I'll feel much better when I start giving hugs and taking photos and playing with everybody's quilt projects there as we get ready for our big Scrap Masters event. And that's going to be, like I said, super, super fun to have everybody getting together. It's so neat to be able to create videos that do bring people together like this. And I really appreciate you all following here along and supporting me with all the new stuff. Got some cool sticker packs that are going to be available real soon. I'll be showing those off as soon as they arrive. Okay, now I'm just going to use that same 1/4 inch seam allowance, and with my rows, lock in those seams, kind of wiggling them together and adjusting kind of each seam as I go, making sure. Of course, you could pin or clip if you wanted to. I'm not that accurate. I will take the time to make sure that the fold underneath is hopefully facing in the right direction. That makes things a little easier. I believe it's important to go ahead and iron after each of the rows are stitched together. So I'm going to kind of figure out which is my outer edge, press to my next row up so that I'll continue pressing in or through the block as I travel. Be looking forward to also, like I said, traveling back to Texas. There's several tattoos I've been working on, new ones I'm looking forward to working on back there. Got to do another really fun tattoo this week out here. This was a drawing and a tattoo I did from a sculpture that was carried back from Italy by the young man who received the tattoo and joined the club. It was his first tattoo, and I don't think it will be his last. We had a good time. Pressing again. This box kind of reminds me of this block reminds me of a box of candy. Maybe I just got sugar on the brain. Okay, well, let's have a look at this block. Turned out pretty dang cool. Different than expected, but pretty dang cool. Also like to remind you real quick to join me. I think there's still some time. I'm not sure if there's space in my workshops, but the Reno Quilt Show, Reno, Nevada, June 11th, 12th, and 13th, 2026 is going to be amazing. There is our block for the week. It's certainly going to integrate well on the wall. I'm excited about this. Super fun. Week 26, 13 fabrics used in block 6, following the blue-green color family, if you will. But like, remember, there are no rules. Thank you, folks, for pushing through with this crazy block. I guess I really did set the theme, didn't I? I was pushing through and I had to push through. So there it was. With me today in life and quilting. And don't forget, folks, as we all believe, working with our hands is so good for our heart and our soul, our mental health, our physical health. So make sure that you're doing something creative over the wonderful weekend coming up. And until I see you again, thank you for being here. Please stay well.